Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Art of Healing with your host, Dr. Judy Jasek of Animal Healing Arts, and myself, Matt Rowe of ParsleyPet. During our show, we are talking about your pet's health, raw feeding, and alternative treatments for cancer, unexplained illnesses, and supporting your pet's natural ability to heal. Welcome, Dr. Judy, to this week's show.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be here.
So before the show, we were talking about what we wanted to talk about today, and you brought up the topic about heartworm medication. And I think this is a prime just moment to talk about this, because so often now this is what we are giving our pets. We're getting over-the-counter heartworm medication, and also we're getting heartworm medication prescribed by our veterinarian. So we're talking about the truth of heartworm. So what, I want to ask, what has got this in your thought process right now, and why do you feel this is important?
Well, in the very recent past, the client I saw just before hopping on with you here is actually a dog that was just adopted from Texas. They adopted it 2 weeks ago, and it did actually test positive for heartworm disease. So I just had this discussion with them about this. And so we're in Colorado, and the risk of heartworm disease here is really, really low, almost non-existent. So I think whenever we're prescribing anything, we have to look at each pet's individual situation and their risk. And for pets that live in Colorado, the risk is very low. So the way we assess risk is we look at the life cycle of the parasite. And so heartworm disease. So there's a couple of things that I hear that are common misnomers about heartworm. So you hear heartworm, and the word worm, there's a connotation that worms live in the intestinal tract. And it's true that we do have intestinal parasites. Heartworm disease is literally a worm that lives in the heart. It lives in the pulmonary artery, which is one of the big arteries around the heart. So it's a circulatory issue, and it is spread by mosquitoes. It has to be spread by a mosquito. So dogs cannot spread it directly dog to dog. It has to go through a life stage cycle in the mosquito. So in order for a dog to get infected, a mosquito has to bite an infected dog. And then one of the key things is that mosquito has to be at a temperature of 57 degrees or higher for 30 consecutive days, constantly, or never go below that. For the larvae to mature to the next life stage so that it can infect the next dog. Well, here in Colorado, even as our weather starts to warm up, most of our nights get down into the mid 50s. So it's pretty rare that we would have 30 days in a row where our nights never get below 57 degrees. In the mountains, where there's actually more mosquitoes, but the nights are cooler, so there's no heartworm disease. When you go south, like I saw this dog from Texas, it's more humid, it's warmer more of the year, and it's warmer more around the clock. So those nights are going to be warmer because of the humidity. So the risk is much higher in the South, in the Midwest. So here in Colorado, we've got fewer mosquitoes. Like, I don't know about you, Matt, but I don't know that I've ever swatted a mosquito at my house. Nope. They just seem really rare. If you go places where there's standing water, or again, up in the mountains, the mosquitoes will be worse, but because it's colder, there's not going to be any heartworm. So, I hear people say that, their vet recommended that dogs got to be on heartworm prevention year round. Well, okay, half the year here is winter to begin with. There's no mosquitoes. And even in the summer, we don't have very many mosquitoes. So the risk is incredibly, incredibly low here. So the only time really I feel it's really important for dogs in Colorado to be on heartworm prevention is if they're active swimmers, like they're taking them to the lake a few times a week. So they're real right in like mosquito breeding grounds potentially, or they're going to travel, which nobody's doing much of that these days. But if people travel to the South or to the Midwest, then, we need to think about, okay, might be good to give a dose or two, but just for those time periods, there's no reason whatsoever here in this area for dogs to be on the preventative year round. And, another thing that it's a big focus on my practice, and I don't hear it talked about much when it comes to heartworm, is good nutrition, supporting the immune system. I've talked to other veterinarians in other parts of the country that, like back in the Midwest, where heartworm disease would potentially be more prevalent. Sure. And they say that if they support their patients with, healthy diets, ideally raw food diets, and other immune system builders, that they don't get the heartworm disease, as opposed to the dogs that have underlying health conditions or, are eating a poor diet. So that's a real important thing to consider for a heartworm disease, or, really preventing any disease condition.
Sure. It's interesting is when you go to the dog park, they have that communal, water bowl for all dogs. And I've overheard individuals say, don't share that bowl. Your dog could get heartworm from it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they not just once, this is almost every other time I take Leo to the dog park, you hear a statement like that. So really, it's the infected mosquito that is delivering the heartworm, susceptibility to it. But that mosquito has to be above 57 degrees for a 30-day period for that to happen. And I know here in Colorado, we're lucky if we get 30 to 45 days where it is continually above 60 degrees or above that 57 degrees, especially the evening, because we're so dry. As soon as the sun drops, we go from warm to back down to 50 degrees at night or 55 degrees at night.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a very, very sensitive parameter. So even if it's just a day or two during that 30 days that drop below that, then that larvae will not be infective to the, to the next dog. That's really interesting about the water dish. I hadn't heard that one. But it's, these stories get started, and it's just another case, check your facts and find out, what your dog's risk really is. Don't believe everything you hear at the dog park.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to just take away from just this show. If it's not just all the knowledge that you're gaining about heartworm, it's just don't believe everything you hear at the dog park.
Right.
So, yeah.
The doggy water cooler, so to speak.
I love it.
Yeah.
So the doggy water cooler is not always accurate. So then let's say I'm in the Midwest or Texas, and I'm concerned about heartworm. It's prevalent in the area. I'm definitely getting my days are above that 57 degree mark for a 45 or over that 30-day period in the evenings. So what kind of heartworm medication should I use, and what should be my concerns with that?
Well, there are, preventatives, the oral preventatives. Now, I don't like there's these spot-ons, these like all-in-one that prevent heartworm disease, and then they're flea and tick preventatives. These are really strong chemicals, and they're spot-ons, which means you put them on the dog's skin and then it's absorbed into the body. And these are highly, highly toxic. I really think that just the good old ivermectin products, which is the HeartGuard, or there's generics now that are out there, but it's a low dose of ivermectin. Now there are some breeds, some of your collie breeds that can be sensitive to ivermectin, and then we would make another choice. But for most dogs, that low dose ivermectin will be fine. And actually, if you're really careful and you might mark your calendar, you don't even have to give it every month. You could probably go out at least 6 weeks in between doses. The once a month came from the manufacturer. So they're selling heartworm. So they're not going to tell you, oh, well, you could actually go out every, 6 weeks or 8 weeks. I think 6 weeks is plenty safe. So you could actually, if you were going to go on a trip somewhere where they're like, say you lived in Colorado and you're going to go on a trip somewhere where the mosquitoes were more prevalent, just, give a dose before you leave and give a dose, 4 to 6 weeks later when you get back, and you're fine. If you're living, in an area that's more humid, you can, do that every 6-week treatment. Probably still a good idea to get your dog tested every year. I still recommend testing here in Colorado just to make sure that something isn't slipping through the cracks, because that's how we know if something were to change. Like, what if we got, super mosquitoes that could beat this, 57-degree rule or something like that, we'd want to know that. So,
right.
So I do recommend testing every year in the spring. It can take up to 6 months for the antigen, which is what we're testing for. It's a certain protein from the heartworm, to show up in the blood. So usually I will test in the spring, because then we know we're going to pick up anything that the dog was exposed to the previous summer season.
There you go. So you're actually testing for the summer prior.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So with that, I had a question. Keep going. A question will come back to me. But yeah, I mean, it's all really around that prevalence of it. So, this is my question. So let's say I live here in Colorado and I avoid it, it's not dropping. And then I bring Leo in and we test him, and we realize last summer he's got heartworm. Are there current treatments out there right now that can address current heartworm conditions, or is it all preventative?
Oh yeah, you can treat, and it depends. The treatment course depends on the severity. Now, pretty much all dogs that I've tested positive here in Colorado, they've come, from other states. They've lived other parts of the country, and that's where they got it. And if they're asymptomatic, like this dog that I saw today, young, healthy, no coughing, no signs of any cardiac or respiratory symptoms whatsoever, I do some herbal support. So there are some herbs that I'll use to kind of help support the heart and keep the heart healthy. And then I will put them on the actual preventative for 6 months. And then we test again in 6 months. So it's been shown that the preventative will kill the larvae. So if there's any larvae like in the bloodstream, it will kill them, and then you're preventing them from growing into adult worms. And the adult worms usually just die off. They die off of old age. If you have a dog that's symptomatic, like they're coughing, low energy, you can tell they're sick or they have a heart murmur, then you're going to want to look a bit deeper and do probably an echocardiogram, which is like an ultrasound of the heart, and see what is the worm load. So that's the big thing. I mean, I have heard about cases in the South where there's so many worms, you actually have to go in surgically and remove them. Because you can't just kill them, because then you'd have a whole bunch of dead worms in the heart, and then the body has to eliminate it. And even with a few worms, when you kill them off really fast and they break into pieces and they go out through the circulation, dogs can have some pretty serious allergic reactions to them. So I've found that this sort of slow kill, and I've seen this take up to 18 months to do it, but as long as the dogs are healthy, and there's no adverse reaction to the medication, I think it's much safer than giving the injection. The injection, the quick kill, is a drug called imidacide, and you give 2 injections. You give one, then you give another one 24 hours later. And like I said, the dogs can get pretty sick from that quick kill. You have to restrict their activity for several months until all these, worms are completely eliminated from the system. But when you're doing it the slow way, you're kind of allowing and supporting the body. So like I always talk about, nutrition. And like I said, I'm doing herbal support to help support heart health, and also some herbal antiparasitics too. Kind of like to add that herbal support into the mix, because the plants can be very beneficial. but then also this low dose of ivermectin. So we're making sure that the larvae, the immature worms don't grow into adult worms. And then eventually, because there's no ongoing exposure here in Colorado, and they're on the preventative anyway, but once they're done with the treatment, then you can just go back to a standard prevention protocol. So it definitely can be treated. If there's enough worms, it can be life-threatening. But those are extreme. I heard about cases like that after Katrina, where you've got dogs that were strays or weren't on any kind of prevention. You're in prime heartworm territory down there, and people would go down and rescue dogs, and some of them would have pretty severe heartworm infections, and then they would need to be put down. But that's that's in the South, so that's a little different than Colorado.
Well, and I think that for most pet parents, I would feel that they are taking their dog to the vet on a regular basis, or at least once a year, and they are potentially getting this test. So they are watching it. They're not stray dogs. They're not living in Louisiana. They're not that type of thing. And I think as a pet parent, we're paying attention potentially a little bit more than we would if during a Katrina or during a moment like that, where you're in chaos or this mass disruption. And the fact that we're at home now with our dogs so much, we are more aware about their movements, I've been more prone to how Leo and Mr. Chacha interact with us on a daily basis, which I think they both still want us to leave. They're like, yeah, it's enough, guys.
I need a nap. Yeah.
We're hurt. We're basically part of a pack, but we're kicking you out, and I'm okay with that. So really, on that side is you can really stay on top of heartworm. And as long as you stay on top of it, what you're saying then at that point is, even if you hit an incidence, you don't have to panic. You don't have to give the injection and do a really severe, unless it is a case like that. But if they have, just starting that, just coming down with heartworm, or they're seeing it, then you could go under a protocol to correct it.
Right.
Get them back to basic. So it's really, keep an eye on it, but it's no reason to panic about it.
Yeah, because the test does not tell you how many worms are in there. So a dog could test positive and have one worm. And realistically, if a dog moved to Colorado from, Alabama or Louisiana, had one worm in there, really, you could just let the worm die of old age, which they will. Now, I like to err, a little bit more on the side of caution, because we don't know, is there larvae in the blood? And especially a dog coming from Texas, there's a much higher risk of it maybe having some microfilaria, the immature heartworms, in the bloodstream. So giving the preventative, for 6 or 12 months until we know that all those microfilaria are eliminated, I think is a good protocol. I mean, I feel more comfortable with that as a practitioner. I have known some people that have just opted to do herbal support and immune system building, and the dogs also end up testing negative in 6 to 12 months. So, so that's an option. So if somebody came in to see me and said, I just don't want to do the drugs, I just make sure they understood all the risks and what to watch for. And, I respect people's choices, and really, I believe that probably would be equally as effective. But again, I like to err on the side of caution a little bit. A dog coming from out of state, we want to make sure that we're not setting the dog up for anything more serious to develop on down the road.
Right. And really taking a look and make sure it's just not an over infestation of these worms that are coming through. But, for those that are in Colorado or in an environment where it is getting colder in the evenings, where there is low risk, or even if you're in an area with high risk, it's really just, as long as you are monitoring it, it's really something that is preventable and also at the same point addressable if they do come down with it. So really this, in my mind as a pet owner, we have not been told, I think, all the news about or all the data about heartworm from those around us, from the water cooler at the dog park to, I think, our vets at some point too. As much as we love every one of them, they are selling a heartworm medication.
Yeah. And the thing to remember is if a lot of veterinarians are programmed to sell, and they're programmed to sell by the pharmaceutical companies who come in and say,
Right.
oh, well, I've heard this stuff literally. Well, there could be a mosquito alive in the winter in your house in Colorado. You don't know that that's, not true. Well, I mean, what are the odds of that? And because again, we have this temperature thing,
Right.
even if there was a live mosquito, which is, almost unheard of anyway,
Yeah.
they're not going to be spreading heartworm disease. So
Yep.
these, things are sold, products, pharmaceuticals, vaccines, things like that are all sold on two principles, and it's fear and profit. And veterinarians are told by the pharmaceutical companies, if they don't use this product, then they are putting their patients at risk. And then there could be legal implications and all this stuff, this whole fear thing. And then they, pass that fear on, to their clients. Well, you don't want your pet to get heartworm disease. And they also have combination drugs now. And this is another thing to mention, that have other anti-parasitic drugs. So it's not only heartworm prevention, but they have medications for intestinal parasites, medications for tapeworms. So they're kind of lumping all this stuff together. And so, you're keeping your pet parasite free. And my take on intestinal worms is we should be checking a stool sample and find out if the dog has them. We shouldn't just be giving these medications to our pets month after month after month if they're not necessary. Yeah. And it's, that these meds are all marked up too. So there's a profit affiliated with it, both for the pharmaceutical company and for the veterinarian. And I know veterinarians are all well-intentioned, but if they were to take a step back and actually look at the life cycle of the heartworm and learn whether or not their patients are actually at risk, here in Colorado anyway, they'd find out that most of them are not. I recommend heartworm a little more for dogs that like swim, like they're going down to the, the parks where there's a lake, where you got standing water, so you're mosquito breeding ground. So there's more mosquitoes. So that's that balance between, yes, we have the temperature thing, but if the temperature is kind of borderline, we're in July and August, we might have that 30-day period where the temperatures don't drop drop below 57 degrees. And then they're taking the dog swimming 3 or 4 times a week. Your average, Labrador retriever that loves to get out and get in the water. Those dogs are a little higher risk. So I may say give a couple doses, but really, if you think about the whole temperature thing, you only need to give like 2 doses just in those warm summer months. That's all you need to give.
In the 6-month gestation period for the actual worm to show up anyhow. I mean, really, and like I said, is if you're monitoring it and you find out your lab did get heartworm, you're in Colorado and it just happened, there's a way to treat it. It's not like it's a death sentence.
Right. Yeah, the dogs that get the life-threatening infestations, I think, are the ones, down south where it is very, very prevalent, where the mosquitoes would, could pick you up and carry you away, and it's warm and it's humid.
Yeah. And I think it's very important to watch that type of stuff. And so really, and we see it from a mineral level, is minerals do get affected by overabundance of medication that's in the system. So it's throwing the body out of homeostasis. But you hit it. I mean, to really prevent it, feed a healthy diet, get that gut microbiome and that immune system at a healthy level, so your dog is naturally supporting. So if a pathogen like that comes into their system, they're able to fight it.
Yeah. And, if you think about it, so, we talk about the microbiome, how these bacteria, if you feed an anti-parasitic drug, especially these dewormers that are intended to to kill intestinal parasites. So what do you think they're doing to the bacteria in the gut? They're killing off a lot of those bacterial populations and throwing that whole microbiome out of balance for no good reason, you know, and especially if you're giving it every month year round, the body never gives a break. So if we assess risk and we say, okay, this particular dog might have a higher risk, July and August, let's give a couple doses, maybe let's spread them out by 6 weeks. So the body's getting that break and then they're done and the body can resume that natural balance, that natural homeostasis. So we're not having a long-term impact.
This is wonderful. Like, I mean, just the knowledge that I gained right now from just doing a show on this is I'm going to be a more informed pet parent when I then go look to the, take my dog to the veterinarian.
Yeah. Well, I've got some flyers that you can take to the water cooler at the dog park and hand out to people.
Saying, all right, I got the in with Dr. Judy. Well, the good part is you are my vet. So now, like, I mean, we're now on the same boat on how to treat both of my puppies. But before that, I was taking both of my dogs to a conventional veterinarian that we were being pushed this and being told, if you don't do this, this is the issue that you're going to have, that could happen if you don't do it.
Right. And I always encourage people, ask questions. It's not that veterinarians are intentionally trying to deceive you, but there's a lot of propaganda out there. And, the more times something is said, the more it's believed to be true, whether it's true or not. So ask, well, what is the actual heartworm risk for my dog here in Colorado? I have indoor dogs. I have little Chihuahuas. We go out for a little 20-minute walk every day. They go wander around the yard a little bit. And they're not going to get heartworm. I have never put them on heartworm prevention. No, I mean, they're not going to get it. They have no risk. I even quit testing them because I think it's just so. It would be so unheard of that they would pick it up because of where they're
going to attack the mosquito anyhow because they're vicious.
That's right. That mosquito doesn't have a chance.
It doesn't have a chance in front of them. Well, thank you so much for doing this show today about heartworms and everything that you shared with us. So you are a wealth of knowledge and so proud and happy to have you here with us and doing the show with you.
Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate you hosting, and hopefully this was useful information for our pet parents out there.
I hope so too. So definitely leave a comment in there if you have a question about us. And you can always, Dr. Judy, what is a great way to get a hold of you?
So my phone number is 720-515-2421. My email is info@ahavet.com, and my website is ahavet.com, and that's Animal Healing Arts, which is the name of my practice.
And being a client of Dr. Judy's, I highly recommend. Leo, this last couple of weeks, had a really bad leg injury, and she's been helping get him back to health. And actually, we have an appointment today at 1:30 where we go and address his bandage one more time, and hopefully we can get it off and take this gigantic cone off his neck.
He'll be happy, as will, I'm sure, all the knickknacks in your house.
Right. Oh, he almost took my computer out yesterday.
Oh, no.
One was at 3:00 this morning. He was at the door, pawing at the door. So I open it and we put a chair in front of the door so he can't scratch our door. But all I hear is the cone scratch all the way down the hallway along. Like, all right, you're not going to let me in? This is what I'm going to do.
So now in your spare time, you can touch up the paint, huh?
That's right. So good luck with this one. Yeah. So thank you guys very much for watching the show today. You can always contact us at ParsleyPet and get your dog a nutritional blueprint and find out what nutrient levels your dog is currently achieving right now and how to improve their health with every bite that they take. So thank you so much. You can follow us at ParsleyPet.com, or you can email us directly at hello@ParsleyPet.com. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, I have a blast.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.